My question is, am I coming through okay?
Yes.
My question is for the elephant that's in the room, and that is water. Efficient use of water. Preserving it for us to drink for whatever purposes when we're using it for fracking, when we're using it for creating biofuels. What are we doing to protect this most efficient, most important, most vital of resources?
Okay. I'm looking at the panel, or any of the water people in the audience. Maureen.
So I'll say that here at Purdue, out in Discovery Park, the reason we have 5 centers underneath an umbrella of the Global Sustainability Institute is you're absolutely right. You can't really talk about use of energy without discussing what we do about water, without thinking about the environment, without thinking about climate change, and even without thinking about food security. And so I think that, as a nation, we actually have to have a bigger debate on how those factors influence and interact with each other, and to come up with sort of integrated systems-level solutions for this. Because energy production is hugely expensive in terms of water use. And desalinating, salty water to create clean drinking water is hugely expensive in energy use. So we really can't discuss one without the other. You're quite right.
Okay.
I agree with you, and I would also add that water is, in addition to being extremely important, it's also extremely local. There are areas that have lots and lots of water, and it's not really a constraint, and there are areas that are already mining their water resources and depleting them extremely rapidly. That's one reason we've added to our global model. We've added water, we've partitioned land between irrigated and dry land because we recognize that water is one of the next big major challenges. In the shale gas area, for example, there's an area of China that has very large shale gas resources, but it's in a desert. They won't be able to tap it because there's no water there. So water is really important.
Okay. We had up here in the front.
Mine's more of a little bit less technical question. With a little preface, I'm a senior in architectural engineering. I have my familiarity with energy things either from my internship with physical facilities or being as a part of the Energy Center through the Energy Academy this summer. And I consider myself well educated. But what efforts are you, people in leadership or in leadership roles or in expertise, doing to disseminate this information to public? I mean, we can't expect people to vote or adopt these new technologies if they don't know anything about it. And I'm not talking about like disseminating information to, at conferences for people that are in similar fields, but people just the general public.
Okay, so the intersection of the education and the outreach and connections with the greater population.
So, the work that we do, I think we probably don't do a good job of communicating with the general public, but we do a lot of work with industry. We work very closely with industry, with the technology developments, and so that's a vehicle to really make this, bring it to market. I think there is certainly some of the things that are more interesting do get publicized and get out, to the general public, but we probably could do a better job on that.
I will give an example of a couple of examples from some undergraduate education programs at Purdue. On the engagement side of the house, and to large measure, several years ago, one of the EPICS teams worked with utilities in the city of Lafayette to create educational material to be used in neighborhoods about energy use, electricity, water, and so it was done in collaboration with the schools and the community to bring together the students with the technical knowledge with students who had communication expertise to create material that took that out into the community. Similarly, teams worked with Habitat for Humanity to do energy analyses of the Habitat homes, which touch a lot of people because the construction model for Habitat homes has volunteers coming and building the homes, measuring the energy use with different construction practices, actually changing the practices in the local community here about the standards for habitat homes after understanding the energy use in this particular environment, but then disseminating that through construction videos. And this, a third example, this is a research program on the education side. It's looking at how, whether or not, so the research question is whether using engineering artifacts, so things that are really quite tangible, as a context for learning math and science can have an impact on the learning of math and science in middle school. So for example, science principles about the Earth and the moon and the sun and the rotations and the revolutions, but then connecting that with projects for 4th or 5th graders in actually saying, well, what does this mean for how you would build a solar house? And so starting at a pretty young age to say that there are things that are fundamental in science, but the application we're going to look at is related to solar energy. So I think there are bits and pieces, but systemically, yeah, there's a lot of room, I think, to be far more systemic about how we go in those directions.
Could I add something? I think this is really an important question. And it's something I feel passionately about. One of the things I require of each one of my students is not only that they produce a thesis and journal articles, but that they also produce something that we call an extension publication. And in that publication, they translate what they've done into something their parents can understand. That's much harder than writing the journal article. It's much harder than the standard work that they do. They sweat over that more than they do the rest of their work. But those publications get out and are read by people all over the state and all over the country and sometimes all over the world. We might not want to admit it, but maybe more than our journal articles. Second, I spent a lot of time working with people on Capitol Hill. This summer, the House Energy and Commerce Committee was holding hearings and working on modifications for the renewable fuel standard. I spent hours on the phone with their staffs. We provide testimony to them on issues like that. So we try to get it beyond the walls here to Congress and gave a seminar at DOE on the same question. So we think it's very important to extend what we do here to Washington. Number three, we think it's really important to work with the media. Our communications people here are really good at issuing press releases that get out. We did one last week on changes to the renewable fuel standard. It told me it got 2,350 hits almost immediately. So it's really important. They can be multipliers for us and get things out far beyond what we can do ourselves.
Okay, a Twitter question. Do we have any more questions through through Twitter?
From Twitter, what fields do you recommend today's students should go into involving your areas of study? Where is there the most need?
Energy economics.
All right, we got one ag economics, we have one mechanical engineering. No, okay.
Yeah.
Great question.
So for buildings, I actually think that you really need to be multidisciplinary sort of going forward. If I go back to a couple of the research ideas, big data for buildings, right? You need to have an understanding of buildings, but you have to have a background maybe in computer science, at least be able to communicate well with people in computer science and understand what's needed there. For the idea of the prefabricated smart buildings for the future, I think you have to have a broad range of understanding in architecture, engineering, computer science to be able to put that all together and deliver systems. In the occupant, to understand how the occupant responds to their environment, an understanding of engineering, but also human physiology and human factors, right? All that integrated together to do that kind of work. So I would say multidisciplinary, probably in all areas related to buildings.
And I'd like to echo that because I think that we need to train our students in a different paradigm and stop them thinking within the silos of individual disciplines, but really think about challenging problems and what are the questions out there and what are all the pieces in your toolkit that you need to bring to bear to address an issue. So I think that as we move towards having alternative energy and renewables, then really we're going to move from combustion research towards research that is direct conversion. not involving actually setting fire to stuff that we've dug out of ancient swamps, but being able to use chemistry, being able to use biology, catalysis, material science, nanotechnology, and bringing those to bear to make really smart solutions to some of these problems.
So Wally, you led off with that ag econ. Is that your final answer?
Well, I'll tell you my answer to the question we were going to do at the end, which is if I were a student, which
Hey,
is...
let's hold off on that.
You want to hold that? Okay.
We'll get there. We're going to get to that in a minute. And I would say, and this is absolutely with my engineering educator hat on, one of my favorite phrases is that engineering is a team sport. And I think what Maureen and Jim are saying is that the solutions are going to come from all of these directions, and that you will be multidisciplinary, but you will know something more about one discipline than another. Just inherently, there is nobody who's going to know enough about all those disciplines. And so as a part of that education, a mindset, but also experiences that make you a team player, and a really good team player in cutting edge, incredible areas. And so we're going to wrap up, and that question was a great segue to this. The question that we had decided we were going to wrap up with is that if you were a student today, what would you be studying? What would you pick? If you could start over and say, I'm a student, what would I pick? Wally?
The problems that we have in energy and climate change are really complicated problems. They're not problems we're going to be able to address with any one discipline or maybe even two disciplines. My undergraduate degree is in chemistry, and I switched to economics later. And it's been immensely valuable to have had that chemistry background as an energy economist. So if I were an engineering student today or a science student, I would learn some economics. If I were a social science or a humanities student, I would learn some science and some engineering. We need people who can speak languages across these disciplines to help solve these problems.
Okay. Jim?
I have to give the same answer, actually, different field,
Okay.
but I think I would get a dual degree. I think mechanical engineering, which I love, computer science, possibly do a degree in computer science before I even went to engineering. I think combining these disciplines together to solve these problems is very important.
And Maureen?
So I'm going to plump for one discipline here, actually, and I'm going to say chemistry. And I would go into chemistry and I would look at being able to get into technologies involving carbon capture and sequestration, because I think the single largest problem we have is that we're going to carry on burning fossil fuel for a long time. So let's actually harvest the carbon dioxide produced from those fossil fuels. Let's try and do something useful with it. And so I would be a chemist and I would look at carbon capture technologies.
Okay. So the title of the conference is A New Energy Future. And so if you play this out and you pull together, think about the future where you drive or fly or take the bus from where you live to where you work. You do this leaving no carbon behind, which is in fact the ultimate answer to the carbon tax. And the building or home that you go to is effectively a high-tech Lego brick that has been designed with instrumented components where, in fact, it was predicted at the outset what the energy efficiency of that building would be, but also as there are new technologies, because these are Lego bricks, you can substitute them in or out. And that, so maybe the real question is, how long do we have to wait? And so I'm going to thank you all for being here. Carolyn, a break, is that right?
That's right. We are going to break. Be back in your seats, please. Start coming back in around 10 till. There are refreshments outside. When we return, we will have President Mitch Daniels introducing our last panel, Brian Lamb interviewing former CEO of UPS, Mike Eskew. So please come back.
And
let's thank our panel.
Thank you for the panel.
Terrific, just terrific.
That was great.
Hello, everyone. My name is Christopher Doty. I'm a senior in political science, a member of the PICC, and quite pleased to introduce our next guest. Mitch Daniels is a name known to every Hoosier and recognized by everyone who's politically savvy nationwide. President Daniels entered politics after graduating from Princeton in 1971 by interning for Richard Lugar, then the mayor of Indianapolis. He must have done very well because when Mayor Lugar became Senator Lugar, Mr. Daniels joined him as his chief of staff. Among his other positions, Mr. Daniels has served as executive director of the Republican Senatorial Committee, political advisor to Ronald Reagan, and in several top executive positions at Eli Lilly. In 2001, President Bush appointed Mr. Daniels to serve as director of the Office of Management and Budget, a post he held until 2003. Returning to Indiana, Mr. Daniels won the 2004 race for governor and served 2 very productive terms. Last year, the Purdue University Board of Trustees chose him as president of this great university. Please join me in welcoming to the stage President Mitch Daniels.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, good friends of this exciting new endeavor at Purdue University. Appreciate your helping our leader, Carolyn Curiel, and her great team get it off to such a strong and exciting start. I feel so cheated that I was given a speech in Indianapolis when I could have been listening and would rather have been listening to the presentations earlier today. So I hope, I'm sure someone captured it in some medium that I can enjoy them later. But I felt very cheated, and of course the audience in Indy might have been cheated too, I don't know. You won't be, however, because what's coming here will be very edifying and but also a source of real pride to every Boilermaker. Before getting on to the panel, let me just say my own thank yous. I hope they've been said already, but Bill Fowler is here somewhere from the Daniels Fund, and thank you for and your colleagues for helping make this possible. You represent a great, great man who I was privileged to meet once or twice. Wish I could claim family ties, but that wasn't true. But we very much appreciate your support, but your being here in particular. And to the earlier panelists, a really a stellar group of people engaged in a topic that really is got to be of interest to every single one of us. Affordable energy is the way up for the poor of the world, as it has always been, and finding ways to do that that are consistent with the conservation and protection of our planet. It's something that should absorb the attention of us all. When I said we're not only about to be illuminated but proud, of course I'm referring to the fact that the conversation we're about to listen to involves 2 of the alums of whom Purdue has the most to be proud. Brian Lamb, who fought us, but allowed us finally to name our School of Communications after him, is himself, to me, an example of the very sort of innovation and, as we like to say, disruptive technology on which progress depends. When we think about energy in the past, and let us hope in the future, it's a parade of breakthroughs that suddenly reshuffle all the cards and change all the equations and scrap all the forecasts and the programs, and we're living through another one of those eras right now, in the case of natural gas, for instance. And so in his medium and in the world of public affairs communication, Brian Lamb was one of those disruptors who invented something brand new and changed the way we all receive information about the public affairs that are so important to us all. And with him, one of the great, great leaders to emerge from this school, someone who held multiple important business posts and rose to the very top of his industry, which is, to me, perhaps the most global industry. If you want to meet people who really understand the world and have seen it firsthand and have seen it in a way that diplomats don't and frankly, even scholars don't, from ground level then talk to somebody like Mike Eskew or someone with whom he's competed. So we are really appreciative to them for years of reflected luster on our university. Appreciative to all you for being here to join them today. What a treat to turn this audience over to Brian Lamb and Mike Eskew.
I must say it's a little different feeling because normally I get to have you over on the other chair there, and love to do that again someday, cross-examination. A little tougher than it used to be. Let's start with Mike Eskew, graduate 1972, by just asking him to tell you what he did today.
You know, I cut class during that last section for the first 15 minutes. I started school at Purdue 46 years ago today. This is my 46th anniversary, and so I wanted to go over to the Double E building and go into Lecture Hall 129 to see what was going on in there. So I walked in, and they were teaching Math 161, which is that was my first class. And I looked at it, and I knew what it was. I'm a little rusty, but I thought this is really full circle to be back here on the 46th anniversary of my first class day at Purdue.
We're going to start. First, I have to acknowledge to you that I have some bias in this interview because this man is, although not a blood relative, married a blood relative of mine who's sitting down there, Molly O'Gara, now Eskew. And I've always wanted to do this because in spite of what you might think in a family, you never ask the tough questions of your relatives.
We have a lot of answers for each other, though.
I do want to start, though, Mike, with the personal story before we get to the energy. We have a bunch of juniors and seniors in this room that won't be here for very long, and no doubt are thinking like you did back 46 some years ago as to what you were going to do. When did you know that you were going to go to work for United Parcel Service?
You know, I didn't know. I graduated and went to look for a job. It was 1972. Found UPS through a headhunter, which I had to pay the employment fee to join UPS. I paid 1 month salary, which at the time was $900. It was the best investment I ever made. So I joined UPS. I went to work in Indianapolis, and I did all the basic, simple engineering things. But I was really very curious, so I wanted to see if I could learn as much as I could, ask as many questions, Brian, that we do of each other, and just learn as much as I could. I did that, and then we moved to Germany, as you know. We opened up business in Germany, really got to find out how people thought about us beyond the U.S., and then came back and ran an engineering group in Washington, D.C. Then we went to the West Coast and ran a bigger engineering group, and then we started the UPS Airlines. I was lucky enough to be the first person to help plan that and buy the aircraft and do all the planning for the airline, both in Louisville and in Connecticut at our headquarters at the time. And we also were building our technology group at that time. We are a technology company today. You may think we're a trucking company, but we started the technology group. I was on the steering committee that did that stuff in the early 80s. I did that for a while. Then we went to New Jersey to run our operations in New Jersey, came back to our now corporate office, ran the engineering groups, and I became chairman in 2002.
When in that process did you think this was possible that you would become chairman? I have to, let me tell the story though. Mike is as modest an executive as you'll ever find out. The family knew nothing about how successful he was. He was just Mike. And I woke up one day and I was hosting the call-in show in the morning, and I was going through my newspapers, and I flipped the Wall Street Journal to a page that said, I don't remember the headline, something like new chairman designated at UPS. And I said, oh, that's interesting, because I know Mike was going to retire. So I looked down and actually chills ran up my spine. I said, it's him. My cousin's going to be the chairman of the board of UPS. And I remember waiting until 6 o'clock, and I called Molly at home, and I said, how'd this happen? And none of us knew how incredibly successful he had been. So when did you know in the process that you were going to be chairman of the board?
I probably knew a couple of years before. And I had to ask Molly, would this be okay? And Molly had to, I'm not sure we want to do this, but I think I knew for a couple of years. And so we went public a couple of years before I became chairman. I led the road show for that IPO. So I knew pretty much then that I was in line.
Well, explain to this group how big UPS is.
Well, I mean, we have 400,000 employees. We're $54 billion in revenue. We move 6% of the U.S. GDP, 2% of the worldwide GDP through our network. We touch 2 million shipping customers, 7 million receiving customers, 16 million packages every day. And we've got, if we were an airline, we'd be the 7th largest airline in the world. So we're a sizable company.
How many airplanes do you, I know you don't own them all, but how many do you control?
We own about 290 and we lease about 300 or so others beyond that.
How many vehicles do you own?
We have about 95,000 delivery vehicles and about 6,000 tractor trailers.
What did you learn in industrial engineering at Purdue that you've been using all these years?
You know, I think you learned at Purdue this whole engineering mentality about how to solve problems, how you think about things. Our founder at UPS told us in 1956 to be constructively dissatisfied. And I think Purdue taught me to be constructively dissatisfied. There are always better ways to do things. We can't be satisfied with what we're doing today. We understand we may be here, but the sky's the limit. And I think that's what I learned here.
One of the things that we've had today on this stage, in my opinion, are tremendous communicators, which is not always the way you get in academics. A lot of them are terrific. Some of them aren't as great on their feet as they are in their heads. I mean, their brains. I graduated in speech, which a lot of people, I've never met anybody else that graduated in speech. But this university, everybody that comes here has to take Speech 114.
That's right.
Can you remember whether Speech 114 was hard, easy, whatever, and what impact that might have had on you?
You know, I thought I liked Speech 114. I took it over at Heave Hall 46 years ago tomorrow. I thought I enjoyed it. It gave me a chance to meet different kinds of people beyond the engineers, and to think about different things beyond calculus and chemistry and physics. And I like that change of pace.
But when you were here, what courses helped you in giving you the confidence to go on and do what you've done with UPS? And by the way, Mike is on the IBM board, the 3M board, the Eli Lilly board, and the UPS board.
What gave me the confidence?
I mean, what kind of classes did you take here that helped you do
you know,
this?
I think this whole engineering curriculum here, this is a terrific place. I mean, I've spoken at universities around the world. I've spoken in China, I've spoken in Singapore, I've spoken in Europe, spoken in INSEAD. I've spoken all over the world. This is a special place, and I think you may not realize that.
What makes it that way?
You know, I think it's these people. I think it's these people that are that really just have the discipline and the thirst to learn. And I think that knowing that you could graduate from a place with this many terrific people, I think gave me a lot of confidence.
So if you and I were just having a personal chat, just the two of us, family chat, and I said to you, what should I look out for? I'm about to become the chairman of UPS. I'm about to be a big CEO. I got a board of directors of how many?
11.
What would you tell me?
You know, I think you're going to have to constantly learn. I mean, you don't have all the answers. You're going to have to build a team. You've got to learn all the way through. You can't take yourself too seriously. And you've got to challenge everything you see. I mean, UPS, we were started in 1907, so when I became chairman, we were 94 years old. And so there's this rich culture that really drives us to do the things we do. So I would say rely on that culture, challenge the things that may be outdated, build a great team, and know that you're going to live in a world that you're going to enable global commerce. So you're going to live in a world that, and you're going to connect people and culture and lives. And you have to watch and think about how you do that.
To energy for a minute, and I particularly want students to get up and ask questions after a couple of seconds here. But energy, tell a story about how UPS decided that vehicles ought to turn right instead of left to save energy.
You know, part of the industrial engineering at Purdue is all about optimizing, routing, and that kind of stuff. If you think about the matrix that we have, and this is big data and it's algorithms. So if you can find out all those 16 million before they get to you and optimize that dispatch, making sure that you can put out the right number of drivers, you can track that driver through her area the way she needs to go, make all those 200 different commitments she has to make during the day to keep the customer satisfied. And you start thinking about the miles and the energy and how you can optimize this whole thing. That's an engineering problem that Purdue students are good at. But then you start thinking about where do they sit and where do they idle? Well, the big part of where they idle is when they're trying to turn left, because they're ongoing traffic, they're crossing ongoing traffic. It's unsafe. You're stopping people behind you. And if you can turn right, you're always moving. When I said I did a lot of basic things when I started in Indiana, one thing I would do I would ride along with drivers and we would do time studies. And you'd think about where are we stopping? And we're stopping trying to turn left. So how do you optimize turning right as much as possible? And you may see a UPS driver someday turning left, and that's, unfortunate situation, but one of our chief operating officers was interviewed on something like this not too long ago. He said, I drive with my wife and we go down the street and we're saying we're going to the drugstore and I drive by one and then another and then another. And she said, you keep driving by him? She said, I'm waiting for one on the right. So it really is, with density, it really is something that saves fuel. And it's one of those little things you don't think about, but it's a big, there's no real silver bullet. It's one of those things that make a big difference.
How much time did you spend on energy through those years, and give us some idea of how you changed things in order to save energy?
Energy is a big deal at UPS. It's about 8% of our revenue we spend on energy. Most of that's on fuel, and most of that you don't think about is jet fuel. So it's a big part of it, jet fuel. But we would spend an awful lot of time thinking about energy. Energy and fuel, for instance, if there's a perfect world, I'm going to let you look at a perfect world here. In a UPS delivery vehicle, there's about 250 stops, packages in that vehicle. If it weren't for that vehicle, there'd be 250 trips that each of you would be making to the store, the office, to your suppliers, so we're consolidating 250 trips and eliminating those 250 trips. A perfect world, we are the equivalent to packages, what the bus is for you. So a perfect world will be nothing but UPS vehicles and buses. But, unfortunately we're not there yet, but that's what consolidation does. The next thing we would think about is how do you integrate that? So if you would step into that delivery vehicle and look at the packages, you'd see packages that came from Hong Kong, that flew from Los Angeles, that came on the ground from Chicago, that came on the ground from Los Angeles or New York. You'd see all these things going to businesses, stores, going to homes. It's all integrated. It's all sequenced in that order for the driver to deliver it. And we optimize them through that area. Some of our competitors have a different driver for ground and for air and for international and for residential. And Brian, we think that's like if you and your wife would stay at home and say, let's go to the store, let's each drive our car. I'll get the milk and you get the bread. we think if we can integrate it, which is what we've done, we could save fuel. And that's been a big part of that integration. That's one other way we think about it. And then the final system-wide holistic thing we think about is where we can trade off modes. Where can you put things off the road and onto a train? And we put an awful lot of our traffic onto trains. We're one of the biggest users of rail traffic in the country. And that's taking things out of gasoline and putting them on the train. And then where can we take them out of the air? For instance, a 2-day package that may fly from Chicago to Atlanta and move it on the ground and still deliver it within the right sequence. And if you could do that modal transport, integrate it and consolidate it, you've got a very efficient network to begin with. And then beyond that, you do all the other things like big data and algorithms to optimize the delivery. We do an awful lot of, like the last panel talked about, sensors and telematics to be able to make sure that each of the vehicles tuned properly, always updated, always going to be able to make it through the area, that we can tell if our drivers are doing the fuel efficient things, if they're idling too much. We eliminated 1.5 million gallons of fuel just last year by eliminating idling, by minimizing idling of that vehicle. And then we buy alternative fuel vehicles. We put electric vehicles on the street in New York in 1935. I don't know, I hate to think of what those batteries look like, but
Bigger than the vehicle.
bigger than this thing probably. But so we'd try anything. We've been using hybrids since 1988. We drove 50 million miles last year in alternative fuel vehicles. And that should be from 2000 through 2017, we should have driven 1 billion miles in alternative fuel vehicles. So it's not one thing, it's alternative fuel, it's telematics, it's algorithms, it's consolidation, integration, modal trade-off. It's all that holistic stuff you can do. And then finally, it's, can you measure it? I mean, can you measure it and hold yourself accountable? We put out the first in the industry sustainability report in 2003. Molly and I went to California, we kicked it off, and we wanted to set goals of what we would look like in 2008, key performance indicators of miles per gallon and packages per mile and flights per ton mile and that kind of stuff. And we really held ourselves accountable. We will get to these numbers by 2008. And so that measurement's been a big part of it also.
Allie, do you have any Twitter questions?
Our first question would be, UPS 2012 Sustainability Report says the company aims to influence positive sustainability change. Can you explain those initiatives?
Well, yeah, we talked about an awful lot of them, but the 2012 Sustainability Report was more than just fuel. It was also about water, it was about forestation, it was about a lot of different things. But can we continue to reduce our footprint with carbon by doing the things that I mentioned, modal trade-off, integration, consolidation, and can we meet the key performance indicators that we've set out for the future to be able to minimize our footprint? I mean, we have a big responsibility. We use a lot of fuel. So we have a big responsibility, and that's what we tried to address in that sustainability report.
Students, are you ready to come ask questions? If not, I'm coming after you because I got a mic right here. So whoever wants to start this thing. Is Amelia in this audience? Where are you, Amelia? You promised me you'd ask a question. Where are you? Come forward. Yeah. While you get to the microphone, Allie, do you have another Twitter question?
What is the biggest energy waste at UPS currently, and more importantly, what is the biggest barrier to fixing that?
The biggest waste and the biggest barrier. You know, from a waste, you know, we would like to be able to optimize and have better knowledge and route better than we even do today. I mean, that's a big part of it. The other thing is when you buy a plane, that's a 20-year investment. And when you buy a package delivery vehicle, that's a 15 or 20-year investment. So you need to think about how do you keep that thing as current as possible. That new technologies we think about are lighter weight vehicles, we've done an awful lot with aircraft. We're going to put winglets on the 767 this year. When we re-engined our 727s, most people put hush kits on them, but we re-engined them and put the most fuel-efficient engines on them that we could at the time. Lighter weight vehicles, we taxi out with just one engine running. We fly at lowest speeds we can to save fuel. Some of the avionics to be able to allow us to fly more directly would be a big part of it also.
Amelia.
Okay, so as an engineer and a current MBA student, would you say that having an engineering background really helped you get to where you are today, or would you say that any kind of background would have gotten you where you are today?
No, I really do think that the whole problem-solving technique that you've been through, I mean, the discipline you go through. I came up to Purdue a couple of years ago, and the professor was talking about collecting homework. And I thought, isn't that interesting? He said, the only way to get this is to go through that, to make sure you've gone through the grind of that this was a statics or a dynamics or a thermodynamics class, and I forget which. But you can go through that stuff. That's the only way to learn it. I mean, and that's when you sit down with the financial reporter, you sit down with big problems that people in business have today. It's a grind. I mean, you have to really roll up your sleeves and look at it and say, this is going to take 5 years or 10 years to get at this issue, but we're going to start. And I think the engineering things that Purdue gave me was a big part of it.
You have a follow-up? You don't have to. Students, yes. Please tell us who you are.
I'm Sam. I wondering when you was in Purdue, do you remember any characteristic you have, like kind of unique or outstanding, like it contribute to your success right now?
Yeah, the biggest thing that happened for me at Purdue was 45 years ago this month. I met my wife. That was the biggest thing that happened for me at Purdue.
I thought I was going to get a cut of the action when you did marry her, and nothing's happened so far. There's no. Do you have me in your will?
Well, let's do it both ways.
You don't want what I have. I mean, yeah. Go ahead.
Mr. Eskew, I'm Andrew Ferdon. I'm a graduate student in civil engineering.
We met earlier, yeah.
Yep. Certainly, this is probably less true recently, but in your early years with UPS, one of your primary competitors was a government entity with theoretically limitless ability to outspend you and take losses to compete with you. How does that change your business model and your business approach as a private company?
It's that they're a tough competitor. I mean, you're right. They have unlimited resources. They can lose billions of dollars and still be able to compete with us on an awful lot of the big growth in this industry is business to consumer. That's the internet's driving an awful lot of that. So we have to be real sharp. I mean, and so spending less on fuel, making sure we do it optimally, making sure that, like fuel, there's no one answer to compete with the government with unlimited resources. We also cooperate with them. We do things together with that entity. We deliver some things for them. They deliver some things for us. And it's we're trying to serve commerce around the world. But they're tough to compete with. You're right.
Next.
Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Eskew. My name is Frank Speak. I'm a junior at Purdue, double majoring in political science and history. I'm also involved in PICC. I read an article, I don't know last time it was published, but it talked about when you were with UPS, you wanted to break into a new area of the market with planes. And you only needed 4 planes, but I guess the company that you were working with said that you had to have 6 or nothing. And when you had the 6 planes, you said in the article that you couldn't sleep for a week because you didn't know how it was going to end up. But you quickly learned that the amount of packages that you guys were distributing, you could have had enough to fill up 280 planes. So my question is, do you see any more novel areas in which UPS or other companies that you're working towards to break into the market?
When just the thing about vision, when I joined Purdue, or joined UPS in 1972. I looked at the annual report from the year before. In 1971, UPS received its first $1 billion in revenue. That was our first $1 billion revenue year, and we were in 37 states. And I thought, 11 more states and we're done. That's the extent of our growth. And now we're in 200 countries. We do more than just ground delivery. We do logistics to the world. Yeah, I think that there's an awful lot of things. I mean, the thing that I learned about that, buying those aircraft at those times, and it was a quick decision, do you want 6 or nothing, was to deal with ambiguity. You never have perfect information. You'll always need more to make that perfect decision, but at some point, you need to make a decision. And so that's what I learned with that. But I also said we're not going to get trapped into that again, so we're going to build a network planning group, a Christmas planning group, a long-range planning group, and an OR group, so that next time I can answer that question with a little bit more intelligence than I just used to buy 6 aircraft at $25 million apiece.
Allison.
Hi there, Allison Turner, political science and environmental science. I was one of the students fortunate enough to go on the May trip in Washington. Following that, I actually spent the summer with the Environmental Protection Agency and with the Center for Corporate Climate Leadership. So kind of 2 things off of that kind of brought up when we were talking about UPS. One, to my knowledge, if I remember correctly, you guys won the Supply Chain Leadership Award a few years back. So I'd like to hear a little more about that. And also the energy use more in your internal buildings, kind of, more just headquarters operations. So not fuel, but more in your buildings.
How many buildings do you own?
Oh, gosh. I would tell you a number wouldn't be right. I don't know.
Would it be 1,000?
Oh, it's more than that. I mean, if you include all the UPS stores, which we don't own, those are all rented through franchisees. Yeah, it would be around the world. Technology buildings, freight buildings, logistics centers. Yeah, it would be something like that. And the supply chain award. I mean, we think an awful lot about the supply. It's our customer supply chain. What can we do to enable your commerce, and how can we create solutions? Is the way we thought about that. So that was the way we approached that problem. It's been a great deal for us, especially in healthcare and technology and fast-moving retail, and it's something that's allowed us to satisfy customers and take them to places they could have never gone before. I mean, the internet really allows those small customers that are locked in one place to be able to touch the world, and we can take them there. That's what we wanted to do.
Thanks, Allison.
My name's Jeffrey Peters. You transitioned a large portion of your fleet to natural gas. What were some of the biggest obstacles for that? And where do you see the future of that fleet, whether it's expanded infrastructure for natural gas or electric vehicles or other sorts of fuel?
A couple of things. That's a great question. We have about, 2,500 or so natural gas vehicles in both our delivery fleet and our over-the-road large tractors. They're LNG and delivery fleet is CNG. The biggest obstacle is infrastructure. Very few places can you fuel this, and they're more expensive. So can we find what we've tried to do is find ways to be able to go with the local delivery fleets of other people and say, let's create critical mass. And if enough of us did this thing, we could create so that they're not hand tooled, but they're really mass produced. And then can we also drive infrastructure placements? So we have great places like Oklahoma and Brooklyn and Washington, D.C. and Atlanta, where we have good infrastructure, and we've made big moves into CNG. And other places, it's a hard thing to do. It really is a big deal for us. Some of the tanks, if you think about the tanks that hold compressed natural gases, limiting for the miles they go, but we can overcome an awful lot of that.
Allie, do you have another Twitter question?
Is there a new technology or material that has the potential to revolutionize your industry?
New technology or material? Gosh, we use it all. I mean, lighter weight vehicles, natural gas, do 2 or 3 things with hybrids. The new clean burning diesel has been a good thing for us also. And then the lighter weight, like I mentioned, the lighter weight vehicles are something we think a lot about.
I want to ask you a question that has nothing to do with energy, but Bill Fowler is sitting down here in the first row, and he's here from Denver representing the Daniels Fund. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the Daniels Fund. I knew Bill Daniels. I grew up with him as kind of a senior mentor. He's not been alive since 2000, but he was an entrepreneur. He didn't have a big corporation. He ran a small company, made lots of money, took $1 billion and turned it over in a foundation, and Purdue got $1 million of it to do this kind of thing. You chose to go a corporate route. Describe to young folks here that are going to graduate why you chose the corporate route, and it's a employee-owned corporation, stock in it and all that, and then others choose that I'm going to wing it. I'm going to go out there and try, take a chance. What made you the corporate type versus the entrepreneurial type?
Some of it may have been the times we lived in 1972. Some of it may, it was, Vietnam was winding down. There weren't a lot of jobs. I thought that, and UPS was doing the things I was interested in. I mean, I was interested in that kind of stuff. I really thought, and I still think, I think more now than ever, that what UPS was doing is noble. I mean, do these people do good things? And I really do. And I used to tell that to drivers all the time, that, you do the big things, but you do the little things, the things nobody ever tells you. And why do you do that? I mean, why are they, I'd see two drivers in Hong Kong, and they'd be saying something, they'd go back to their, we don't call these trucks, we call them package cars. They'd open them up and they'd be full of packages, and they'd go like this, and you'd say, where do they get this? I mean, how do they think about those kinds of things? And it's because what they do is they believe in what they do.
I hate to tell you this, but often when I would leave the office, I'd ride the service elevator down to the garage, and I often would ride with some of your drivers and FedEx drivers too. And I always try to determine which one were friendlier and all that. And so to the UPS drivers, I would say, I don't want to say much, but my cousin's the chairman of the board of UPS. And I never got anybody saying back to me that, wow, they didn't care that I knew you, and I just wanted you to know that.
Good to know.
More students, more questions.
I'm Sam. I'm an actual science and computer science student. I'm interested in finance, and I realize that your company have price to earning ratio, which is about 100, and your competitor FedEx have 20. The price to earning ratio is 20. So it means investors seem to, investors thought you have much better potential in the stock market. So.
Yeah, I would unbundle that a little bit. I think there's probably a one-time adjustment in the price. I think there's probably a one-time charge in that price.
Okay. So it should be right now.
I think we're probably about a 14 or 15 PE.
Okay, but it's still higher.
Well, let me think about that for a minute. We're more than that even.
Do you want me to look it up here?
No, yeah, okay.
Do you feel like you have a strong potential compared, with other, compare with your competitor? With FedEx or?
We like our model. We think what we do is around the world with fully blended, with integrated services, with the supply chain. We like a lot of the things we do. And we have a lot more to do. We need to be constructively dissatisfied, but we like our model.
Make you unique, compared with others?
I'm bullish on. I'm a big believer in UPS.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Next.
Hello. My name is Minja Kim. I'm a sophomore studying in management. Last semester, I got a chance to attend the President Daniels Forum. And in the forum, he was emphasizing on for the undergraduate students to start a business, to have to just get the entrepreneurship mind. So, what are some tips or advices that you can give to those people, those people who wants to start a business right after college graduation?
tips for people that want to start businesses. Sleep while you can. Really to be curious and to think about and to watch what your potential buyers need and want, and what's going to go. And then work. I mean, have a dream, believe in it, work at it, and stick to it. I mean, that's about all I can tell you.
All right. Next.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mike Pence. I'm a senior in political science and professional flight. Part of the educational experience, especially here at Purdue, is getting involved in organizations and taking on leadership roles. Some of us in the room are involved in PICC, for example. Could you talk about maybe what you were involved in and how that helped you when you left Purdue?
Well, Mike, you and I were in the same fraternity, so I know. I came down and spoke to Mike and a group of his fraternity brothers, and I was as president of the House and Russ chairman. And I had a little job on the side, and I was an entrepreneur. I had 5 cigarette machines. It used to be a big deal in those days, and 2 Coke machines that helped finance me.
In your own house?
No, in different. I had them spread through sorority and fraternity houses through campus.
Were you in Molly's sorority?
Yeah, no, she wouldn't let me. But in those days, that was a.
It's a big deal.
It was especially. I mean, I learned a lot about peak season planning during finals. I couldn't keep them stocked. So, but those are the kinds of things I did at Purdue.
I didn't know. That's the first time I ever heard that.
Yeah, I did that.
Yeah, I should have come to you earlier and for advice. Ashley.
Hi, my name is Ashley Munson. I'm a senior in political science. I'm also involved in PICC. And I'm in the class where Ambassador teaches and Brian Helps teaches. And we had to write a paper, on should we pursue American energy independence? And I wanted to get your perspective on that. If you think, as far as Americans, we should pursue that, and your opinion on that.
I think we should. Yeah, I absolutely. So listen, Brian asked all the UPS drivers how I do. How's he do?
In class?
Yeah.
He's excellent.
Okay, good.
Thank you very much. And I don't even give the grades out. That's all Carolyn. Yes. Siddharth?
I'm Siddharth. I'm a junior in ME. This one question relates to what you said a couple of minutes back. You said that UPS is expanding business into 200 countries, and I understand that most of them are developing and underdeveloped nations. So how do you maintain the same logistics you've got in the United States while dealing with broken roads, erratic electricity, slow internet speed?
Some of it that's a really great question. It's all the same technology backbone. So if you want to go to UPS tracking and track a package that we deliver in Paris or Los Angeles or Bangalore, you can go to that and track it no matter where it was delivered, where it was picked up. It's done with the same piece of technology, that same computer the driver carries all around the world. So it's all in that same database. So if you will, the information infrastructure is the same. And then you try to make the delivery infrastructure look as much the same. Now, we have different models for whether we own it, whether we use agents, or whether we use based on density, different parts of it, and we migrate towards more of our own things over time with density. But it's all brown. It's all, the vehicles are all, they look the same. The uniforms are all the same. And it's surprising, the culture and the feel that I could see a driver, I can go to these morning safety meetings anywhere in the world and listen to them and not understand a word they're saying and get a feel what they're talking about. And these people are nodding their heads and they're thinking about, let's don't turn left and let's, they get that. And there's something about it that I think that's the noble part of what we do, because I think they understand that they're delivering to hospitals and they're making commerce go. They're delivering needs that are absolutely critical. And that culture carries across the world.
Do you know what you're going to do once you leave here?
I don't know, set up my own business, I guess.
Good for you. Set up your own business. What kind of business?
I don't know yet.
Yeah, don't tell anybody here what it is, because they might run and beat you to it. Allie, give us 3 or 4 tweets that you've got, so that just to get a sense of what people are asking.
One of them is, do you think in your current time of your career more like a manager or like an entrepreneur? The next one would be the UPS whiteboard TV ads a few years ago were great. What are your feelings, Mr. Eskew, on marketing branding ads? How important are they to UPS? And finally, what government policies do you favor that would reduce the use of fossil fuels?
Let me do the middle one about the whiteboard. I used to go around the world and I used to talk about, I think leadership is all about a vision and then constantly talking about, this is our vision, this is where we're going to go, this is the kind of company we're going to become. We're going to do these things and we can't do it without you. I mean, I just think that's what leadership's all about, and making sure that everybody knows they're a big part of where we're going. So I used to go around the world and I used to talk about what UPS was going to be. And I would draw it on a whiteboard. And I would be one company. In other words, we're going to integrate all these different freight companies and air companies and freight forwarding companies and brokerage companies and logistics companies, and we're going to create one company. And we're going to treat each customer like they're the only one we have. It was 1-to-1, 1. And I would talk about what we needed to do to create that thing. We needed to make acquisitions. We needed to fix our brand. We needed to treat customers differently. We needed to leverage technology. And we needed to make people with us and make sure that everybody understood their role. From that, the whiteboard thing came. It was the takeoff of the stuff that we did around the world. And I really thought that was a simple way just to be able to, just to make people see the picture of what we wanted to do. I'm a big believer in what branding can do, about how information about customers, how you can reach customers, how you could tailor those things to customers. When you have 2 million shipping customers and you want to be able to take data and go to them and talk about solutions that they need, we can take you, we can do this, we can make you better. I just think that's a powerful thing to do.
What about the first one on entrepreneur versus?
We were a private company for the first 25, 27 years of the 36 that I was an active employee. I always felt like it was my company. So I always felt like when I made a bad decision, I was hurting my partners. I thought that if I took too much in pay, that wasn't right. This is a private company. This is something we needed to. It was democracy with a small d, and that's how I felt about this company. It was my part of the partnership.
Your first grandson went to school today for the first time at age 3.
We have September 13th in common.
Yeah. My real question, though, is what are the chances? 4 of your 4 children, only 1 went to Purdue. What's the chance that you're lobbying Charlie to be a Purdue student?
I hope he does. But Molly is third generation. I'm second generation Purdue. Molly's grandfather, both her parents, she did. And then our son, Jim, was the 4th generation on her side, 3rd on my side. So if we could talk some sense into these grandkids. I didn't do that well with my kids, but maybe.
The president has kept the tuition down, so you probably haven't got anything to worry about.
Hi, I'm Casey. I'm a freshman in engineering. So I'm just wondering, with your 1,000 or so buildings around the world, are you guys looking at making your processes for using electricity and heating, making those more efficient, or using more alternative sources there?
Yes, we are. I'm not sure that number. I should check that number. It's a lot of buildings. But yes, we are. We're using solar panels in certain places. We've done an awful lot of, we try to keep our buildings as dark as possible during the daylight hours when there's nobody there. Electricity is about 6% of our overall energy bill. Like I said, fuel is the biggest part of it. But can you keep things dark during the day? Can you just bring it up when the drivers are there, when the sorts are going on? And then can we use solar panels in parts of the world? And we've done that as much as we can. And we buy, from the grid where we can.
We're running out of time, so anybody that has a question can come up to the microphone. Go ahead.
You talk very highly about your Purdue engineering degree. You also say that you constantly have to learn in your position as chairman of the board. Is there anything that your engineering degree didn't provide that you had to learn on the fly or kind of wish you learned at the time?
Well, lifelong learning. There was no such thing as, we just had calculators when I was at Purdue. Think about the advances in technology, and so all those kinds of things. But the ability.
I got a important. Did you carry a slide rule?
No, I know where mine is.
Did you have it on your belt though? I just wanted to know that because that was always a great designator.
No, I kept mine on my.
Leah Jamison still carries her. Go ahead.
I know where mine is. I know where my graphics, Leah. I know where they are too. So, but no, the world's changed an awful lot since those days, and an awful lot I didn't learn, but I learned how to learn. And I think that was the most important thing that I learned at this place is how to learn and to be curious. Because the world you're going to face is going to be, the things that so many of the people that were up here today said, you won't see this in your lifetime, you'll see it in your lifetime. So.
Hi, I'm Mudesh. I'm studying computer engineering technology at Purdue. And I wanted to ask, of all the processes that go on to keep UPS running, like the technology that handles the tracking, for example, how much of, if at all, of these processes are outsourced to other companies that you guys use? Or do you have everything taken care of in-house, like the programming and the technology and all that stuff?
We do an awful lot of the technology ourselves. There are certain specialty things that we do outside, but we do an awful lot. At our scale, when we store and track 15 million packages, we do an awful lot of things at scale. So people talk about, do you use the cloud? Well, we've got 2 very large databases that we manage. By the way, that's a big data centers, rather. Data centers, big users of energy that really, I don't know if anybody talked about data centers today and how that growing demand for data storage and data manipulation is really driving an awful lot of energy. But we do run 2 big data centers. We do an awful lot of our programming. We do outsource specialty areas. But we maintain most of our applications and write an awful lot of what are, for us, unique applications.
Hi. Lizzie Campos, a junior studying political science and also part of PICC. I just have a simple question. How do you feel about FedEx?
Oh, I think they're a great company. I think they're a terrific competitor, and they've made us a better competitor. They've made us a better company.
Explain the difference, FedEx, and the way it started, the way UPS started, and the way it is today, and the difference between a Fred Smith and you, besides personality.
FedEx started, I'm going to say, in about 1973 or 4, as an air delivery company, and it really was Fred's. When he talked about his term paper at Yale, that he said we could exchange packages. It was in the regulated days of airlines, so they couldn't operate their own aircraft above a certain weight. So they operated a lot of Falcons and a lot of Lear-type aircraft, and they would fly, I think, originally to Little Rock and then to Memphis, exchange packages on these little planes and send them back. Deregulation in the Carter years allowed people to get into the airline business in bigger jets. So they were able to upscale to 727s. That's what really triggered us to be able to do it. With our customer base, we couldn't afford, because it would just take a few things to upgrade, and we'd blow out of all the Falcons in the world. So they started as an airline, stayed as an airline, were regulated under the National Railroad Labor Act, which basically is a different labor law than UPS's, and became, and really stayed in the airline business. We started as a ground company, moved into air in 1984 when I mentioned some of the airline early days. Integrated air and ground together right away. We went to Europe in 1976 when we went over there, and grew internationally a little bit in Europe beyond that, but really didn't take off internationally until about the late 80s, which is about when FedEx did it. They today are and we bought some cargo companies and some LTL companies and some freight companies after that. Today, if you see them, they have a ground delivery network, which is basically contractors in the U.S. And then they have a employee-based air delivery group, 2 separate delivery fleets. And then they have another contractor base that delivers their residential. They're a great company.
Just to follow up on Brian's comment, is the UPS man nicer than the FedEx?
Well, I think so.
Thank you.
I mean, all over the world, the people come. I used to get letters every day. I still get some. I mean, I've been retired for 5 years plus. But I still get letters about UPS drivers. I'd write each one of the people back. I'd write each of the letters, each of the drivers, a little note about how they changed, how they did something little. And it was just these things that nobody expected of them. I think they're terrific.
But by the way, I used to ride the service elevator. I still do with the FedEx drivers too. They're great guys. Really nice guys. They do know who you are, by the way. Amelia?
So I have a follow-up question. Would you say you think more like an entrepreneur or manager?
You know, I don't know how I think. I don't know that there's any one way I think. I think, I probably think more things can be different. I mean, I don't think I think it's linear. I think about, let's not look at what we have, let's think about how things can be. Now, I don't know if that's a manager or entrepreneur. An awful lot of terrific managers, I think, that think that same way, and maybe some entrepreneurs that don't. I don't know.
One last student question, and then we're going to have to close it down.
Hi, sir. I'm Siddharth Agarwal. I'm a sophomore in mechanical engineering. As Purdue is not in the main city, it's not really it's not a metropolitan place. Like West Lafayette is not such. So we keep on ordering stuff from Amazon or eBay or any other online website. So what happens is that we keep on accumulating those cardboard boxes in our rooms. So can't there be any other alternative to those cardboard boxes? Because at the end of the day, we are accumulating more waste, which in the end of the day is going in the dustbin, and I think that's a big waste.
You're right. It's a big waste, and something needs to happen. If they put them in UPS envelopes, those are reusable, and they're made out of recycled material. But the UPS envelopes have a double flap on them, so you can use them again. So we got to get them to put them in UPS envelopes.
Thank you. Molly, before we close down, do you have any questions you want to ask your husband in public?
Brian, we actually have more time.
We do?
We started, well, because we allowed for President Daniels and Chris Doty to start.
And President Daniels really spoke a very long time.
He really did. It was just really amazing how long he was up there. But you have until about a quarter after if you need it. If not, we can go to open discussion on whatever.
I still want to ask Molly, do you have a question? No, of your husband? This is a good opportunity.
How about
Mics
of your
are hot.
cousin?
Huh? No, don't do that. Are there any, Allie, do you have any more Twitters?
Yes, I do. Twitter question from David Bodaya. Could you give us an example of a time you made a mistake that turned out to help further your career or UPS in general?
I've made so many. There were times when I used to talk about making decisions, and I'd say that it was easier to make a decision about buying a large company or making a big acquisition. That was an easier decision than to tell a driver that we needed to scan a package one more time, because the driver has so much going on. and with 15 million of those a day, every day of the year, that's a big decision to think about. Can we put that much more labor into each of those things? So I was always reluctant to change those kinds of things. But I made a lot of mistakes.
Mike, you're on your own up there. Sorry. Good to see you again. We have a very distinguished man sitting in the first row here by the name of Jim Rogers. Just stepped down as CEO of Duke Energy. And before we shut this down, I think, Jim, stand up here just for a second, if you wouldn't mind, please. This guy ran a big energy company, and he came in, was going to speak to us tonight, but I wanted you to get a chance to, you've been listening all day. What can you tell this audience that you've either learned or something you want to comment on to set a few of us straight?
Well, first of all, I'm not in the business of setting people straight. I've found this conversation that we're having right now very interesting, because I think the questions have been asked and the answers that y'all have heard have given you a good insight in terms of the importance of leadership, not just at the corporate level, but the importance of leadership within universities, within our communities, and we don't have enough people with vision and leadership, and what you're hearing right now is about vision and leadership, and that's the differentiator for our country in terms of being successful in the future.
Thank you, Jim, very much. Another fellow in this audience that's rather important to the school right now is the chairman of the Board of Trustees right here. I went to school with him. He's a lot older than I am. Just became chairman. As you listen to all this business of, you're an entrepreneur, as you listen to all this business of leadership, do you have anything you want to add to this?
Well, I would add to...
Let me first tell you, it's Tom Spurgeon, in case the people don't know who you are.
I would just add to Mike's comment that leadership is vision. That's the catchphrase that I'm going away with, and there is no question about that. And as you cite that vision over and over to everyone around you, they all come aboard.
Why would you want to be the chairman of the Board of Trustees of this university after all the years you're in business? What's your motivator?
I guess my motivator is that I think there's always an opportunity to be better tomorrow than we are today. And I'm stepping forward to say I'm willing to help make that happen.
Thank you, Tom. We ought to ask Tim McGinley, who was chairman of the Board of the Trustees for 10 years. What does a trustee do?
Well, that's a pretty good question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, there's 10 trustees here at Purdue. They're responsible for the general welfare of the university and for first selecting a leader, the president of the university, which is probably the main responsibility, and then working with them to set a strategic plan for the university and making sure it gets done.
Thank you, Tim. Mike, you, as I said earlier, you serve on several other boards. What does a board member do of an IBM or a 3M or an Eli Lilly?
You know, if you're a board member, you represent the share owners. I mean, there's an awful lot of people that look to you to make sure that you provide transparency, that you give them the right information, that the company is performing and operating and doing the things they need to do, and that you hold them accountable for the share owners. And that's really what you do. There's 11 members of a board. If you think about it, if you put all those share owners in a room, it's you couldn't get at the proper oversight. So we're really trying to stand in for the share owners.
You're also on the Annie Casey board, Annie Casey Foundation. What does that do?
The Annie Casey Foundation, Jim Casey founded UPS. He left most of his money to a foundation. Jim went to work when he was 11 and founded UPS when he was 19. He said without his mother, he doesn't know what would have happened to him. So he left most of his money to a foundation named after his mother to help kids that are underprivileged, kids that really need things. So we try to we spend about $200 million a year for kids that are unfortunate and underprivileged and need a helping hand to do things. We started as a foster care organization. Foster care has come a long way. We do things around foster care. We do things about providing family economic success, how we can help families take that next step. We've done an awful lot of work at reading at third grade level, trying to help kids read at third grade level. Child welfare, we've done some things in all the states. When Mitch was the governor, we met with the governor, talked about a new child welfare information system. They're really focused on each kid one at a time, as opposed to looking at what the system needed. We talked about what the kid needed. And we built that system at Andy Casey, put it in Indiana. Indiana is the only state today that can look at each of their kids and say that kid's been visited by a caseworker in the last week, 2 weeks, 3 months, or whatever. No other place can do that because of what the governor allowed us to do at the time and put that thing in this state. We think that's going to really change the way child welfare is done. And it's those kinds of things that the Casey Foundation does.
Bill Fowler, I mentioned earlier, Bill, stand up just for a second if you would, please. We wouldn't have the PICC without Bill Fowler and the Daniels Fund. And really the question I wanted to ask you, thanks for coming all the way from Colorado, but the question I wanted to ask you is why do people like Bill Daniels, the deceased Bill Daniels, give $1 billion to a foundation so that you can give the money away years later?
Well, in our case, it's pretty easy. Bill didn't have any kids of his own. He was married several times and had some stepkids, but he left his wealth to the foundation. I think I wanted to say to Mr. Eskew that the Annie Casey Foundation does great work, and I'm familiar with their work. And the donor intent of Bill Daniels is what's so hard to defend and stand by. We get a lot of requests from organizations all over the world wanting us to help with their project, and Bill was very clear in where he wanted us to fund and the 9 funding areas that he wanted us to fund within. And so staying in the donor intent is very critical.
How many scholarships do you give away a year to what area of the country?
We have 2 programs at the Daniels Fund, a grants program that I run, and that's 70% of our budget, which is about $50 million a year. We're a $1.3 billion foundation. And the other program is the scholarship program, which is 30% of our budget. We have 250 new kids every year, so 1,000 kids on scholarship, theoretically. It's a last dollar scholarship, so we will fund them to their last dollar to go to any university that they can be admitted into in the United States. So anywhere from community college to Harvard, and we've got kids in just about every state across the nation.
For our students in the audience, you can see that you have a lot of opportunities ahead of you. You can make that $1 billion and give it away if you want, or you can not. President Daniels, before we turn it over to Carolyn Curiel, you've been sitting here listening to all this. You must have things that come to mind. And by the way, Mary Fran and Glenn Sparks and others want to thank you for giving the extra $1 million to the communication school for the match.
Well, it'll be some of the best funds Purdue invests, I'm sure, and today's a good example of it. Now, I just think that listening to this just reminds me that as in other areas we could mention, the potential of this fabulous place is still so sky high, and we should have more programs like this. And so Carol and I will scheme about those. I've been thinking about lecture series. There are things that we can do to further enrich the menu for our students and the whole community here. And I would just encourage everybody here, maybe listening to Mike and Brian triggered a thought in your mind about a subject or a speaker or a question you'd like to hear addressed. I think we want to increase the intellectual traffic flow even further through Purdue, and today's a reminder of how great that could be.
Thank you for coming today. I want to turn it over to Carolyn in just a second, but very exciting. Carolyn told everyone at lunch about this, but in the spring, the great presidential historian Richard Norton Smith is going to provide an opportunity for students that want to travel for a week through the state of Indiana and a little bit in Illinois and the next year in Ohio for 6 days. You can travel, spend time with him, learn about Indiana presidential history. And you'll learn at that time why Mitch Daniels didn't run for president this time around, but will run next time. I just wanted to tell you, be the first to tell you that. None of this would have been possible without the drive of Carolyn Curiel. It's all yours, Carolyn. Thank you very much. And Mike Eskew, you still are my cousin. I will claim you after you did a nice job today. Thank you, sir.
Well, as you can see, Brian likes to do what I call his Billy Joel. So as the concert starts to end, he jumps into the audience. I really cannot tell you what work went into preparing for today, not just this event. We just had a luncheon that launched us. Last night we did a special session over dinner of the class that I teach with Brian, the Communicators with Brian Lamb. And it's all about the students. The students are, without a doubt, what has driven this from day one. When I came onto the faculty full-time after having served as chief of staff under President Daniels' predecessor, I asked the question, just a very basic question, Glenn will remember this. I said, where do you really need help? And I was told undergraduates. So thus began a journey to figure out how do we serve our undergraduates better. And people have stepped up all over. The advisory board, would you please stand up? Our advisory board. These are individuals who have done so much for Purdue students. I cannot even begin to tell you. Paula Dwyer has been our partner with these kinds of forums. Dale, you stay standing up. Dale Pupillo of the U.S. Secret Service made sure that our kids got into the White House, had a tour, met people who worked behind the scenes, and it was a fascinating experience for them. Chris, stand up, please. Chris Morris, who was for a long time lobbying for Abbott on the Hill and was just so highly respected that when she called Speaker Boehner's office and she said, I'm bringing Purdue students, he dropped everything and met with our students, and it was really an amazing thing. And she is now with the Cleveland Clinic and doing great work there, and we're really proud of that. Glenn Sparks, stand up. Glenn Sparks, one of the sharpest individuals that I have worked with, who figured out how to make it work that we would even be able to do a Washington program in the first place. From the inception of an idea to the delivery of students in Washington, the call-outs, scholarship money raising, everything else, we did in under 8 months. And when I heard that Purdue spends 2 years planning things, like a class like this, I was just appalled. So thank you, Glenn, for making us see that it is possible. Bill, stand up. Bill Morrow, who has had an amazing career, but who started out, in my eyes, as my boss at the Purdue Exponent, where I was the sports editor making trouble while he was in charge. He and Paula actually were in charge. And Bill has had our students on Capitol Hill for receptions. He managed the office for Barnes and Thornburg, where he is a partner, and he has just been someone who plugs in. If our students are interested in a law career, I send them to Bill, and he is unbelievably generous with his time. Every individual who has signed up to help us as an advisory team member has been somebody who has really given of their time and their heart to help our students. That's what this is about. These individuals succeed not just because of the knowledge that they have, not just because of the classroom learning that they've had, but because they are able to communicate truly complex thoughts. We have engineers who can now explain things. I saw the most amazing presentation on fracking from one of our Maymester students who did all the research, interviewed reporters from all angles, and then gave this presentation that just blew it out of the water. It was the clearest thing I have seen. That's what we want to do. Because you know what? These individuals, these young people will end up leading because they can be clear about what they are thinking and which direction they want to lead. And so with that, I'm going to say thank you to all of you for coming. This is a bit of a celebration. Erica, where are you? Oh, there's Erica. The students have done all of the work leading to today. And Erica is one of my students in my class, and she's going to close us out. Erica, if you would.
Good afternoon. My name is Erica Fisher, and I'm a senior in the College of Liberal Arts, double majoring in political science and law and society. I have learned so much today and have thoroughly enjoyed listening to the thought-provoking discussions. I hope you all have as well, as this is the intended goal and mission of PICC. As we near the conclusion of today's events, I would like to thank all of those who have participated. I would like to extend a special thanks to the audience, including those here and on the live stream, for providing all of your wonderful and thoughtful questions for our discussions. I would also like to thank all of our guests here with us today and those who have helped us think through this difficult topic of energy. I know many of you have traveled great distances, some as far as London, and others from across the country. It means so much to us for you to take the time out of your demanding schedules and spend it here. I would also like to thank all of the students who were involved in ensuring the success of this forum, and as well as this exciting launch of PICC. These students put in so much hard work, both on stage and behind the scenes. Their dedication is sincerely appreciated. We would like to extend a sincere thank you to the Bill Daniels Fund and Mr. Bill Fowler for the generous grant that made it all possible and will help allow these amazing experiences to continue for the next 4 years. On that note, I would like to invite up on stage Mr. Fowler, President Daniels, Ms. Paula Dwyer, Ms. Mary Dunwald, Ambassador Carolyn Curell, Mr. Tom Spurgeon, all of today's panelists, Mr. Jim Rogers of Duke Energy, and all of the students who helped work today's event. This forum also served as a celebration for the official launch of PICC. And I don't know about you all, but I don't consider it a good celebration until I see the cake. So please welcome Mr. Nick Caprioli, our wonderful stage director, and most importantly, our cake bearer.
Bill Daniels, can you circle around here, please? President Daniels, Tom, Bill Fowler. I think he's talking about you.
I would like to once again express our gratitude to all of you for coming out and supporting PICC. Thank you and have a wonderful evening. And most importantly, boiler up.